Why does cognitive dissonance matter? Jennifer Harvey said, "The cognitive dissonance of colorblindness cannot help but disable our children's attempt to put their experience into meaningful language and develop concepts that resonate with something resembling reality." What she means by this is that children have an inconsistent way in which they understand race, and they would be unable to use their own words to describe their experience with race. Parents' influence on children and racial bias. How can children develop a racial bias? Well, first, we should understand what a racial bias is. A racial bias is a form of implicit bias, which refers to an attitude or stereotype that affect an individual's understanding, actions, and decisions in an unconscious manner. Children may develop these racial biases through interactions with their peers. Children at an early age, during their elementary years, are extremely susceptible to racial biases. Children may also develop a racial bias based on the media that they have seen. Media can be a tool that can help children develop a racial bias. What media may unintentionally cause children to develop a racial bias? What message might children draw from portrayals and actions? Well, children are extremely imaginative, and they can create situations based on the actions or portrayals that they see in TV shows, in media platforms like YouTube, or in books. And these may be ways that they can develop a racial bias. Methods parents can approach racial bias. What method might some parents be using to teach racial socialization? What racial socialization is? It's the process children acquire the behavior, perception, values, and attitudes of an ethnic group and come to see themselves and others as a member of the group. What is a method that parents may be consider using? There are two main methods that are constantly being seen. That is colorblindness and color consciousness. As I said before, children may develop a bias at an early age without parent intervention. Children notice the difference in race and ethnicity early on, and without proper guidance, they may take on biased messages. What this means is parents don't usually realize that children notice race and ethnicity, and it may become more difficult to properly teach them about race later in their life. Children are easily influenced. As I said before, during their elementary years, children are extremely susceptible to racial bias message. They may take an idea from their peers that are negatively understood. Children can also be influenced by media, with portrayals creating a negative bias based on a narrative that is being made. Media as a tool to develop racial bias in children. Children have numerous amounts of platforms that they can learn about their world. However, some of the information that they may come across has the potential to skew the way that they view or look at race. For everyone else, media is a great way to see what is happening in the world, or understanding experiences that have been written down from the past or from other people's perspectives. However, children are impressionable and may misconstrue the meaning that everyone else understands. Some examples of media: Brent Staples, "I only need to turn a corner in some dicey situation or make an errant move after being pulled over by policemen, and John Elligan, BLM protesters had been outraged by the meek response of law enforcement compared to the aggressive tactics that they have encountered. Now, we understand that these are seen as difference in treatment between race. However, children may view it as an authority figure, such as a law enforcement or a police officer, just doing their job. So they may take in a message that the people involved are in the wrong. How do parents socialize children? A popular method of racial socialization for parents tends to be colorblindness. And colorblindness has been used since the 19th century. Colorblindness is the idea of looking past race and just seeing people for people. The idea of colorblindness is not all that uncommon since it has been used within the Supreme Court as well. The Supreme Court had said that the Constitution is colorblind, which is why a lot of parents like the idea of using colorblindness as a way of racial socialization. However, some experts disagree with the use of colorblindness. Harvey believes colorblindness can be used to short-circuit attempts to respond to long-term effects of racist policies and practices that have created uneven playing fields. Perry et al., they see it as evidence that demonstrates that colorblind racial socialization reduces awareness of racial bias, and some scholars have even argued that racial blindness leads to ignorance about the societal implication of race. Both authors see colorblindness as destructive to children in the long term. A new approach. Not so new, but another approach that parents may consider for racial socialization is color consciousness. Both authors, Perry and Harvey, believe that this is the best method for reducing racial bias in children. What color consciousness is accepting that some people are affected by the color of their skin, but it rejects the concept that race is different. Color consciousness has been seen to reduce bias and increase awareness of racial inequality in children. Color consciousness also teaches children about being respectful when noticing the difference in race. An example of this is Jennifer Harvey. She was in a supermarket with her daughter, and her daughter pointed out the difference between her and another girl, and Jennifer told her daughter to note down, to understand the difference, but not to take it, but to be more aware of what she is saying when she is around other people, because it can affect them. In conclusion, parents have immense influence on their children's racial bias. They have the ability to minimize this racial bias or increase it depending on the method of socialization that they decide to use. Without proper guidance, bias could become a problem for children in the future. It may negatively impact their life. A resolution: parents should not be the only ones to be influencing. It should not be the only influence on their children. It should also be up to the education system. Race should be a topic explored at young ages to reduce racial bias in children early on. and here are my works cited.